Story 1. Survivor's haunting encounter at the abandoned lighthouse. The wind howled mercilessly as we approached the desolate lighthouse on the cliff's edge. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the crashing waves below seemed to echo the impending dread that gripped our hearts. My companions and I, a group of researchers seeking to uncover the mysteries of the abandoned structure, were unaware of the horrors that awaited us within its decaying walls. As we stepped inside, the musty scent of decay assaulted our senses, and the dim light filtering through the broken windows cast eerie shadows on the walls. The floor creaked ominously beneath our feet, as if whispering tales of the tragedies that had unfolded within these walls. We split up to explore the lighthouse, each of us drawn to different corners by an unseen force. I found myself climbing the spiraling staircase, the sound of my own footsteps echoing in the empty space. With each step, a sense of unease settled in my chest, like a weight pressing down on my very soul. Reaching the top, I was met with a breathtaking view of the raging sea below, its waves crashing against the rocks with a ferocity that sent shivers down my spine. But it was not the stormy sea that held my gaze. It was the figure standing at the edge of the cliff, its back turned to me, facing the endless expanse of water. I called out to my companions, but no sound escaped my lips. It was as if the very air had turned to lead in my lungs, suffocating me with its oppressive weight. The figure slowly turned its head, and in the dim light, I saw its face, a visage twisted in agony, eyes hollow and empty, a silent scream frozen on its lips. Panic seized me as I stumbled backward, the world spinning around me in a dizzying whirl. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating me with their oppressive presence. I could hear the whispers now, faint and insidious, like the murmurs of lost souls trapped in eternal torment. As I made my way back down the staircase, each step felt like a descent into madness. The shadows danced around me, mocking and malevolent, their twisted forms a grotesque parody of life. And then, as I reached the bottom, I saw them, my companions, their faces contorted in silent screams, their bodies frozen in a macabre dance of death. I stumbled out of the lighthouse, gasping for breath, my mind reeling with the horrors I had witnessed. And as I looked back one last time, I saw the figure at the cliff's edge, its eyes locked with mine in a silent promise of eternal torment. Anonymous Spectator Story. Story 2. The Final Judgment at the Abandoned Harbor. The wind howled through the desolate harbor, carrying with it a bone-chilling cold that seeped into my very core. As I stood on the creaking wooden pier, the only sound breaking the eerie silence was the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the decaying boats. It was Christmas Eve, but there was no warmth or joy in the air, only a sense of impending dread that hung heavy like a shroud. I had come to the abandoned harbor following a cryptic message left on my doorstep earlier that evening. It spoke of a final judgment that would take place at the stroke of midnight, a reckoning for sins long forgotten. Despite my initial skepticism, something compelled me to investigate, to confront the darkness that lurked within the shadows of the harbor. As the minutes ticked by, each one stretching into eternity, I felt a presence watching me from the murky depths of the water. The waves seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, their sinister whispers clawing at the edges of my sanity. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it clung to me like a second skin, suffocating and relentless. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the fog that blanketed the harbor, shrouded in tattered rags that billowed around it like ghostly tendrils. Its face was obscured, hidden in the darkness, but its eyes gleamed with a feral intensity that froze my blood in my veins. I knew then that this was the harbinger of the final judgment, the embodiment of all the sins and regrets that haunted me. I tried to flee, to escape the clutches of this spectral figure, but it was as if the very air had turned to molasses, dragging me down with its oppressive weight. The figure advanced slowly, each step echoing like a death knell in the stillness of the night. I could feel its gaze boring into me, stripping away the facade of normalcy to reveal the festering wounds of my past. And then, as the clock struck midnight, a blinding light erupted from the figure, illuminating the harbor in a sickly glow. Shadows danced and twisted, forming grotesque shapes that writhed in agony and despair. I screamed, a primal sound torn from the depths of my soul, as I realized the true nature of the final judgment. For in that moment of revelation, I saw not the sins of another, but my own reflected back at me with merciless clarity. The figure was me, or rather, the darkest parts of myself made manifest. And as I stood there, trembling and exposed, I knew that the only judgment that truly mattered was the one I passed on myself. The light faded, the figure dissolved into mist, and I was left alone on the abandoned harbor, shaken to my core. The waves continued to lap at the shore, their sinister whispers now a distant echo in the night. And as I made my way back home, the weight of my sins heavy on my shoulders, I knew that the final judgment had already been rendered, and that I was the architect of my own torment. Anonymous Spectator Story. Story 3. Terrifying Encounter at the Abandoned Pier. It was Christmas Eve, and the bitter cold wind whipped through the desolate pier, carrying with it a sense of foreboding that chilled me to the bone. The abandoned pier stood as a haunting reminder of days long past, its decaying structure creaking and groaning in the darkness. I had heard whispers of strange occurrences at this forsaken place, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to experience. As I cautiously made my way along the rotting boards, the sound of the crashing waves below echoed ominously in the night. The moon cast an eerie glow over the water, illuminating the churning sea with an otherworldly light. I felt a sense of unease creeping over me, a primal instinct warning me of impending danger. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence, causing me to jump in terror. I strained my eyes to see through the thick fog that enveloped the pier, searching for the source of the chilling cry. And then, emerging from the mist like a spectre from the depths, I saw her. A woman, her tattered dress billowing in the wind, stood at the edge of the pier, her hair whipping wildly around her pale face. Her eyes bore into mine with a look of pure anguish, and I could sense the overwhelming despair that emanated from her very being. Without a word, she raised her arms towards the sky, a silent plea for salvation. I was frozen in place, unable to tear my gaze away from this tormented soul. The air around me grew thick with a sense of sorrow and loss, as if the very essence of the pier itself was mourning some long-forgotten tragedy. I could feel the weight of centuries of suffering pressing down on me, threatening to consume my very soul. And then, as quickly as she had appeared, the woman vanished into the mist, leaving me alone on the desolate pier. The echoes of her anguished cries lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within these forsaken waters. I stumbled back from the edge of the pier, my heart pounding in my chest. The sense of dread that had gripped me moments before now threatened to overwhelm me completely. I knew then that I had witnessed something beyond the realm of the living, something ancient and malevolent that dwelled within the sinister waves of the abandoned pier. As I fled from that cursed place, the howling wind seemed to carry with it the tormented whispers of the lost souls that haunted the pier, their anguished cries echoing in my ears long after I had escaped. And as I looked back one final time, I knew that I would never truly be free from the terror that lurked within those dark waters. Anonymous Spectator Story.